Today we are at the 2021 Little Summer Bummer Enduro in Roselawn, Indiana, and what am I riding? Well, I finally pulled the trigger and bought a new bike. Well, at least new to me. This is a 2012 KTM 300 XC. So a little bit different than the YZ250 that I've been riding for the past 6 years. Now, I've never ridden a 300 before, or even a KTM bike, and this is my first ride on the bike. Not only is this my first ride on the bike, this is also my first sprint enduro. So, needless to say, I just treated this whole day as a ride day. I wasn't out here to be competitive or anything, I just wanted to get some seat time on my new bike and also try a new format of racing. So speaking of the format, it's actually really cool and unique, I would say. So for the day, there are two tests. Test 1 is a 3.5 mile loop, and test 2 is a 7.5 mile loop. So I'm in the 201 to open C class, so my class needs to do both tests 2 times, and we need to complete all the tests within a 3.5 hour window, roughly. So we're starting out on test 1, the 3.5 mile loop, and actually everyone starts on this test. So we all chose a minute when we signed up for the race. So the minute that you start is based off of what you choose. So I chose minute 14. So I'm somewhere within the middle of the pack for starting. So after we finish test number 1, then we're basically free to do whatever we want. We can go take a break. We can try out test number 2, so the longer loop. We can try test 1 once again and then finish test 1 for the day. It's really up to you what you want to do. There's a little bit of strategy involved actually in this format of racing. And to be honest, I loved it. So we're getting our first look of my first time at riding this bike on some trails. So when I bought the bike, I actually was able to ride it around my yard for a few minutes, but I don't really count that as riding it. So I knew that the bike ran when I went into this race, but aside from that, I did not know much about it. So easing into it here, and I don't know, I just figured my first ride on the bike with some marked trails being a race, it would be beneficial. And really not having any expectations, I was just out here to have fun. I thought it would be okay, so it's easing into it here, trying to figure this thing out because it rides a whole lot differently than my YZ250. Listen to that. We're getting a little bit of brake squeak here. I've never had that before in my racing or riding career, so this is kind of new to me. And now you will be able to clearly hear whenever I use my rear brakes. So I thought I heard someone behind me, and I wanted to pull over for them, let them by, and someone actually is behind me, and they were just a little too far away to get around me before closing fast. I let them around. If someone catches up to you in these races, you don't want to hold them up because at that point they're already beating you. So there's a lot of camaraderie that needs to be had in sprint enduros just because you don't want to hold people up. This is a timed event, and I don't think I actually said this, but you need to basically do each test as fast as you can, and the person with the lowest time, so whoever goes through all the tests in the shortest amount of time, ends up winning the event. So we're racing the clock rather than racing other riders with this type of racing. And that's kind of the reason why I like it. I like the idea of racing the clock and not lining up in a row and then doing a specific number of laps and trying to beat other racers. It just seems more laid back to me. That's why I like it, I think. But it's been a while since I've done trails this tight. Uh, it's all single track. It's all just a single line. It doesn't really open up too much in test number one here. So I was trying to learn the trail and ease back into tight trails like this because I've been spoiled with the GP trails that we've been doing at Fox Valley and Muddy Waters. This this is something that I haven't done in a while. So I stalled the bike for the first time here, and we that's we'll talk about that in a little bit because that was an ongoing problem. And we come to the Enduro cross section, and there was a sign there that said easy to the right, hard to the left, and the club fooled me. I didn't want to go over an Enduro cross section my first time through the test because I have never went over logs with this bike. Now, I feel like I get over it decently. I got stuck on one log, but the club fooled me. I think that was just a joke, obviously, on them doing the easy and hard section, but I end up getting through it. A little bit of trouble, but nothing too horrible. So terrain-wise at this property, it's pretty sandy. It doesn't look like it in the video, but it's sand. So pretty fun and kind of surprising. I wasn't expecting it to actually be too sandy here, but it seems like this event would be amazing if we had rain coming up to it, so the week prior, and we actually did, so it's actually very good conditions. So here, stall the bike for the second time. It's going to be a ridiculous tally on how many times I actually stalled the bike for the entire day, so we're going to be seeing a lot of that, and I do get pretty frustrated because of it, but it's more me just trying to learn the bike and learn the clutch because clutch is different. We're using a hydraulic clutch, so there's actually brake fluid in the clutch line that um, goes to the lever, and it's different than the clutch that I'm used to. Um, on the YZ250, it was a clutch cable, and now it's a hydraulic clutch. So don't know if I love it or hate it. Just needs some getting used to. But here we finish up test number one, and I go take a little bit of a break, probably about 5 minutes, get some water in me, and we get prepared for test number two. So my strategy for the day is actually do the longer test twice and then finish up the day by completing test number one for the second time. So we're going to do test number two twice here, and then we will wrap up the day with test number one. Lined up here for test number two, this is the 7.5 mile loop. So a lot of riders here doing a lot of different strategies. I'm coming on to the loop early on here, so not a lot of people have ridden over this trail yet, so it's pretty new. It's not really beat up. It seemed that a lot of riders did the opposite of what I did, and everyone went to the 3.5 mile test number one, and finished that up right away. And then they came and did the long loop test number two twice in a row to end the day. I'll be honest, the brake squeak got a little annoying as the day went along. So we can see I'm struggling a little bit here. I'm just trying to learn how to ride this bike. Again, new to all of this, new to the 300. A lot of bottom end power here. What I've been told was to ride a gear higher than what I usually would. So I'm in third gear, sometimes I'm in second gear, and I feel like second gear works a little bit better for me. I feel like third gear was lugging just a little bit too much in some of this tight stuff, especially the speed that I go through this. But still learning. I've just been told ride a gear higher than what you usually would, and that also preserves the top end, and then you wouldn't need to do top end rebuilds all the time. So not necessarily just about the bike here, but the race in general. Again, I've been spoiled with the GPs. We get practice, they're sprint races, and it's just the easy motocross sections, the easy trails. And that's what I thought the sprint enduro was also. I thought it would just be simple, easy trails, and no, not the case. It's not super difficult by any stretch. There are a lot of log crossings here, but it's also super tight, not a lot of wide open stuff, and kind of shocked me off the start the first time through both tests. I thought it was going to be easy, piece of cake, trail that is just simple and fast, and no, that's not necessarily the case. It can be difficult, so definitely a lesson learned and something I'll keep in mind in future sprint enduro races. Just because sprint is in the name of the event, that does not mean it's going to be easy. So this is around where I start to kind of fall apart. And that's just because when I was riding through this section for the first time, it felt like it was never going to end. As I said, I just thought this was going to be super fast trails, really easy trails, and just smooth riding all the way through. So as I'm riding through this, I'm kind of shocked to myself, and it just felt like this section would never end. So the mistakes start to pile up as I start to get more and more exhausted. One thing I already know I need to work on just listening to this is riding the rear brake a little bit less. I'm riding that brake like the entire time, it sounds like. So I need to keep my foot off of the rear brake pedal unless I absolutely need to use it. End up catching up to someone here, getting around them, making it pass. They pull over for me, so thank you for doing that. When you pull over, you lose a little bit of time, but also, like I said, kind of just the camaraderie of riders here. I'm relying on the bottom end power a little bit too much. You can tell I'm really lugging it. Again, just inherently getting tired and then relying on lugging a little too much. So need to work on that conditioning just a little bit more. I haven't ridden in a little while, on top of this being my first ride on this bike. So need to get out, practice a little bit more, get into better shape so that I can ride this thing how I know I can. End up stalling it again here, so another stall. Don't worry, we have more coming. So here there's like this small log that is sticking out on this like sharp turn, so kind of caught me off guard there and leaned the bike over a little bit. Didn't fully lay it down, but it held me up a little bit. And then here, once again, stall the bike. Starting to get frustrated with myself. This is the fourth stall of the day. And again, this is just trying to learn how to use the clutch. Also, how to ride the bike because I'm in a gear higher than what I normally would ride. So it's tricky. It's going to take some getting used to. That's kind of the takeaway from this video. We're not going to learn this bike in one ride, so we're going to need probably the rest of the year in order to fully learn the bike and get comfortable with it. I feel like I did okay for my first ride on this thing, but certainly additional work needs to be done. Once I do learn this bike though, really want to come back to this track. There's 4 potential races I could do here every year. So in April they have the Sand Booger and Sand Goblin Enduros, and then here in August they have the Little Summer Bummer Sprint Enduro as well as the Summer Bummer Enduro, which is the day after this race, and it's about double the length for riding. Saw the bike again. You can tell when I start it, getting a little bit more frustrated with myself. Also, I'm exhausted and wondering when the end is and if there's an end in sight for this loop. But back to what we were talking about, 4 potential races here a year. Definitely want to try and do the majority of them. Maybe the Sand Goblin Enduro in April next year, as well as both of the Summer Bummer races. The problem with that is just we would ride on the actual roads for the Enduros, and a little nervous about that, but definitely something to try. And then we just stalled the bike like 3 times within one section, so now super frustrated. Stall again? Oh, I bet you know how I'm feeling now. Maybe riding in just a little bit too high of a gear, especially my first time out on this bike. And now you can tell I am just super exhausted at this point, and we still need to do both tests again, test 1 and 2. We're not even halfway through the race at this point. And what's this? It looks like the parking lot. So the end is in sight. We are almost finished with this nightmare of a ride that I'm putting in right now. I was super excited to go take a little break, get some water in me before we have to do it all over again. So we come out and finish test number 2. So now we are halfway through the event. Just need to finish both tests one more time. So took a quick break and we're going back out to test number 2 once again. But if you look, this is one of my favorite upgrades for this bike. There's a lot I love about this bike, but the kickstand was a huge upgrade. So in previous races, the YZ250, I would have to physically pick the bike up and put it on a stand. And after some long or intense racing, that was always a struggle. So having a kickstand on this bike, huge upgrade. So we're back out on test number 2 once again, and this time I actually know what to expect. The problem is now I am physically exhausted. So when it comes to my thoughts on this bike, I said a few things throughout the video. Expect a full video this off season with my full review is what I'll call it, or just my thoughts overall. Today was just easing into this bike, try and learn it a little bit, but I need a few more rides on it before I actually give a full review, and I need to understand the bike a little bit more. Now, stall the bike again, and at this point, I'm kind of just laughing at myself every time I stall it out on the trail. I'm sure it's pretty funny watching how many times I actually stall the bike, but got a little frustrating the first time through test 2, but once I reminded myself that I'm just out here to learn the bike and have fun, then it's kind of funny once you think about it. So, have to have fun with some mistakes and also learn from the mistakes. Stall it once again here. A little bit of frustration shown that time after I got the bike started again, but yeah, I was a little frustrated with myself because I usually don't stall that much during races. So unfortunately, the GoPro actually ends up dying about midway through test number 2 here, so we don't capture all of the second time through test 2 or the second time through test 1, but overall it wasn't really anything new. My times are a little bit lower or higher the second time through each test because I was riding tired. So overall, I learned a lot with this bike throughout the day. Also, I learned that sprint enduros are a lot of fun and I really want to try more of them out. District 17 offers a few of them throughout the year, so hopefully we can attend a few more before the end of the year. And also, in previous years, Byron Motorsport Park or the motocross track, that property had a sprint enduro. It's not offered this year, but let's have our fingers crossed for next year because I think that this type of racing would be awesome there. So with that said, I will be publishing a video with my full extensive thoughts on the 300 this coming off season, but we will definitely be returning to this property. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will see you on the next episode.